I sat in the uncomfortable chair across from Victor's desk, watching him push a single piece of paper toward me like it was poisoned. My hands stayed still in my lap because if he saw them shaking, he would know he was winning. The disciplinary form looked official, typed up and ready for my signature. "Repeated missed deadlines," he said, his voice flat and bored like he was reading a grocery list. I stared at the paper. My throat felt tight. None of these deadlines were ever communicated to me. Not one. He had mentioned things casually in hallway conversations, vague hints in team meetings, and that was supposed to be enough. I kept my expression blank even though heat was flooding my face. Victor smiled slightly, thinking my silence meant I was defeated. He was wrong. I looked up at him and asked one simple question that made his smile disappear completely. "Can you repeat the exact date you told me about this deadline?" The silence that followed terrified him much more than any angry words ever could. He made up a date on the spot. I watched his eyes dart away from mine as he said, "February 9th. I mentioned it in passing." I knew he was lying because I had been out sick on February 9th. I had sent him an email that morning before I left, explaining that I was staying home. I had even forwarded him all my current projects so nothing would fall through the cracks. I watched him shrug like it was no big deal, like fabricating dates was just part of his daily routine. Inside me, something cold and sharp settled in. It was the feeling of certainty. He had just proven exactly what I had suspected for months. This wasn't about missed deadlines. This was about destroying me. I kept my voice steady and calm as I said, "Actually, I was out sick that day. I have the email documentation." His face flushed slightly, but he recovered quickly. He turned away from me and mumbled something about double-checking the records. But I knew what I had to do now. I politely asked him, "Can I get all of this in writing? I want to make sure everything is documented correctly." He fumbled with papers on his desk, not meeting my eyes. That's when I introduced myself to the experience I was about to have. "My name is Amelia Rowe. I'm a project coordinator at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm. I'm the kind of person who follows every rule, who shows up early, and who makes sure nothing falls through the cracks. I've never been the type to make waves or cause problems. Keep my head down and do my work. I don't cause drama. I've never had. Until today. Everything about my life at this company was designed to be invisible and reliable. I answered every single email within hours. I maintained every schedule. I made sure deadlines were met, projects ran smoothly, and most importantly, I made sure that Victor never looked unprepared in front of leadership. He loved that I made him look so good. He loved it until people started noticing that I was the one actually doing the work. Victor said quickly, "We don't need to involve anyone else in this. Let's just handle it between us." The way he said it made my stomach turn. I knew what he was doing. Months earlier, before everything went wrong, I was the quiet powerhouse behind everything the team accomplished. I was the one answering every email, running every schedule, managing every deadline. I was the one making sure Victor walked into every meeting looking completely prepared, like he had done all the work himself. He genuinely loved that about me back then. He would praise my attention to detail and my organizational skills whenever leadership was listening. But he also hated it. He hated that people noticed. He hated that clients sometimes asked for me by name on projects. He hated that I was becoming visible. I started noticing the shift around the time he hired his golf buddy, Nathan, as our new account manager. Nathan didn't do half the work that I did, but somehow Victor treated him like he was a genius. They had inside jokes. They took long lunches together. Meanwhile, I was still drowning in work, still answering emails at 9 at night, still fixing everyone else's mistakes. That's when I sent the first email that changed everything. It was a simple question about a client project. I was waiting for his response. I had sent Victor a straightforward email asking for clarification on a client project. The email was professional and clear. "Hi Victor, I need the updated budget numbers for the Foster account by end of day so I can finalize the proposal. Thanks, Amelia. That was all I wrote. I waited for a response. Nothing came. By the end of the day I sent a follow-up. Still nothing. The next morning I asked him in person. He said he would get to it. He never did. The tasks kept piling up around me like snow in a blizzard. I was drowning, but I kept my head above water because that's what I do. I documented everything though. Every ignored email. Every unanswered message. Every moment he said he would do something and then didn't. I kept receipts of it all. I started a folder on my computer called documentation. I told myself it was just being organized. I didn't admit that I was building something. That's when I watched him walk past my desk and praise Nathan for the foster account proposal. Nathan had barely touched it. I had done almost all of the work. Victor told Nathan he did amazing work. He told me I was detail-oriented. The way Victor said detail-oriented made it sound like an insult. Like I was boring. Like I was the kind of person who existed only to catch other people's mistakes instead of making my own mark. Meanwhile, to Nathan and the other guys he golfed with on weekends, he gave out plum assignments and genuine praise. I watched him assign Nathan a project that should have been mine. I watched him take the team out for drinks after work and somehow forget to invite me. I was always at my desk, always available, always working. They were at happy hour laughing about things I never got to hear about. Victor started giving me more and more work while Nathan got less and less but more recognition. It made no sense except that it made perfect sense. He was icing me out. He was building a narrative where I was just the background worker. Not a real team member. Not someone who belonged. Then one day he sent an email to the entire team. In it, he subtly implied that I had dropped the ball on a deadline. I hadn't. He had. But reading that email in front of everyone else, seeing people look at me like maybe I had messed up, I felt something break inside me. That's when I understood. He was trying to ruin me. The setup started small and deliberate. On a Friday at 4:58 in the afternoon, just 2 minutes before the workday ended, Victor appeared at my desk with a thick folder. "Amelia, I need this client analysis done by tomorrow morning," he said casually, like this was a normal request. I had spent all week on other projects he had assigned. I had no capacity left. But I smiled and said I would take care of it. He walked away satisfied, thinking I would fail. I stayed at the office until 9:30 that night. I ordered terrible vending machine coffee and worked through the entire folder. I organized it perfectly. I added detailed notes. I made it beautiful. When I handed it to him Saturday morning, he looked genuinely annoyed. He wanted me to fail. Instead, I had succeeded. That's when he started contradicting himself. He would tell me one thing by email about how to handle a project. Then he would tell the entire team something completely different. Save both emails. Every single time he did this, I added them to my documentation folder. The contradictions started happening more and more frequently. He would email me instructions for a project. Then in a team meeting, he would say he had told me completely different instructions. People would look confused. I would stay silent. He knew I would stay silent. That's what he counted on. One time, he assigned me to create a specific design for a client proposal. He sent detailed instructions by email. Followed them exactly. When leadership reviewed the work, they approved it. But Victor had apparently forgotten what he had told me to do. He acted shocked that the design wasn't what he wanted. He said he had told me something completely different. I pulled up the email chain and showed it to him. His face went red. He snapped. Well, the client didn't like it anyway. They had though. The client loved it. He was just making things up at that point. I reminded Victor twice to send information to a client about an upcoming campaign. Both times he said he would do it. Both times he forgot. The client called me directly asking when they would receive the materials. I told them I would follow up. I did. I found Victor and asked him about it again. He looked irritated that I was bothering him. I went back to my desk. An hour later, Victor sent an email to the leadership team suggesting that I must not have passed the information along properly. He was blaming me for something he had forgotten to do. The client was confused. I was furious, but I screenshot the entire conversation. Every email where I asked him to send the information. Every time he said he would. Every ignored message. I added them to my documentation folder. I knew I was building something. I wasn't sure what yet, but I knew it mattered. Then Victor scheduled a private meeting with me. In the meeting, he talked to me slowly like I was slow to understand. He explained basic concepts like I was a child. My jaw tightened, but I stayed calm. I nodded at the right moments. I said the things he wanted to hear. Every single condescending word he spoke became fuel inside me. It became motivation. He told me I needed to improve my communication skills and be more proactive. I had been doing everything proactively for years. But I didn't argue. Just listened. The patronizing tone in his voice made my blood boil beneath the surface, but I refused to let him see that. I remembered every insult wrapped up in corporate language. I internalized it all, not because I believed it but because I was saving it. I was collecting evidence of his dismissive attitude. After that meeting, I noticed something that made my heart skip. Victor started CCing his boss, Kevin, on emails about projects. But he wasn't CCing me. I would find out about updates by accident, or Kevin would mention them to me in the hallway. Victor was deliberately cutting me out of communication while simultaneously making it look like I wasn't being kept informed. He was creating a paper trail, a narrative where I was incompetent and out of the loop. I realized that his strategy was backfiring in ways he didn't understand yet. I realized what he was doing, and for a moment my heart sank. He was creating a paper trail without me. He was building a case against me that I couldn't defend myself against because I was being excluded from the very conversations that documented my supposed failures. But then I saw something that changed everything. In all his attempts to create documentation, Victor was actually terrible at it. He was disorganized. He contradicted himself constantly. His emails were rambling and unclear. Meanwhile, I had been keeping meticulous records for months. Every email saved. Every conversation documented. Every contradiction catalogued and organized. That's when I realized I wasn't actually powerless. I was powerful. He just didn't know it yet. The more I studied my documentation folder, the more patterns emerged. I could see exactly how he operated. He had a system for destroying people like me. He identified high performers who wouldn't fight back. He isolated them. He blamed them for his mistakes. He made them invisible until they either quit or broke. But he had never encountered someone who had documented everything. He had never faced someone willing to let the truth speak for itself. Then a major project deadline appeared on the shared drive. Nobody had told me about it. I had never heard of it before I saw it on the folder. My name wasn't even on the project team list. But somehow, Victor had told leadership that I was the one handling it. I was completely blindsided when Kevin, Victor's boss, pulled me aside and asked how the project was coming along. I had no idea what he was talking about. He explained that Victor had apparently told him that the task is being handled by Amelia. My pulse started racing. I had never even heard of this project before that moment. But I kept my face neutral. I told Kevin I would look into it immediately. I went back to my desk and found the project folder. There were files. There were deadlines. It was due in 2 days. I finished it overnight. I poured everything into that project. I made it perfect. When leadership reviewed it the next morning, they were impressed. Kevin actually complimented me in front of the entire team. Victor watched from across the room. His jaw clenched. He was not happy that I had succeeded. He was not happy that I had made him look good again. Instead of thanking me, he accused me of being unreliable in front of a coworker the next day. He said I hadn't communicated clearly about my process. It was a lie, but who was I to argue? I realized that my success was becoming a threat to him in ways he couldn't control. He was losing his grip on the narrative. That's when I stopped being defensive and started being strategic. Instead of reacting emotionally to his lies, I organized everything I had been collecting. I sat at my kitchen table at night and went through months of emails. I created folders labeled with dates. I made a timeline of every incident. I time-stamped every contradiction. I was building a quiet weapon, one email at a time. I created spreadsheets that showed exactly when he had lied, what he had said versus what happened, and who could verify each thing. I didn't do this out of anger. I did it out of clarity. I was going to end this, but I was going to do it with the truth. I printed out key documents and organized them in a physical binder, color-coded by category. Documentation of lies. Evidence of favoritism. Proof of contradictions. Examples of credit stealing. Screenshots of his condescension. The binder grew thicker each week. One day Victor saw me printing out some documents. He asked what I was doing. I told him I was organizing files. He said, "You really need to stop this over-documentation thing. It's getting ridiculous." He said it like I was being paranoid. He said it like keeping receipts was some kind of character flaw. I smiled and told him I would think about it. Then I went back to my desk and continued documenting everything he did. His request only confirmed what I suspected. He was afraid. His requests started getting sloppier. His attempts at creating a case against me became more transparent and desperate. His favoritism toward Nathan became so obvious that even other team members were talking about it. I overheard conversations in the break room where people wondered aloud how Nathan kept getting good projects despite doing minimal work. His resentment toward me seemed to grow thicker and heavier with each passing week. I watched it all happen and I documented all of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was patient. I was waiting for the right moment. I was building toward something. I could feel it coming like the electricity in the air before a storm. My colleague Priya even pulled me aside one day and asked if I was okay. She said she had noticed how Victor treated me differently. I told her I was handling it. She didn't need to know the details yet. She didn't need to be caught in the middle. I was protecting her the way I wished someone had protected me. Then the big project arrived. This was the one that would change everything. This was the one that would determine whether Victor succeeded or failed. This was the one where he would finally overreach and expose himself completely. The big project required coordination between multiple departments. It was complex. It needed careful planning and clear communication. Victor was supposed to lead the entire thing. He was the project manager. He was responsible for everything. But 2 days into the project he disappeared. He didn't show up at meetings. He didn't respond to emails. He wasn't at the office. I later learned from Priya that he had taken a long lunch and simply never came back. He was avoiding responsibility. Again. I filled in the gaps quietly. I did the coordination. I managed the departments. I made sure things kept moving forward. I scheduled meetings with the 3 different divisions involved. Created timelines. I made sure everyone knew what was expected. Nobody asked me to do it. I just did it because the work needed to be done, and Victor wasn't doing it. This was the pattern. This was always the pattern. And I was always the one cleaning up his mess. On the 3rd day, Victor reappeared. He acted like nothing had happened. He handed me a folder with what he said were the correct numbers and information for the presentation. I was supposed to use these numbers for everything that followed. He made a point of emphasizing that these were the definitive numbers, the final numbers, the only numbers I should use. But something felt wrong about those numbers. They didn't match what the client had told me during our coordination calls. They were significantly lower than what had been agreed upon. I double-checked by contacting the client directly. Victor had given me outdated information. Deliberately. The numbers in the folder were from a proposal from 6 months ago, before the scope had changed. He had trapped himself and tried to trap me in the process. I verified this by asking specific questions that only someone who knew he was wrong would understand. He had set me up to fail. If I had used his numbers, the presentation would have been wrong. The client would have been upset. I would have been blamed. And that was exactly what he wanted. But I caught it. Fixed it. I saved the project anyway. I used the correct current numbers with proper documentation of why I changed them. I created an email trail showing my verification process. Victor couldn't argue with it. That night, when I showed him the corrected presentation, he stormed into my cubicle the next day, pretending that I had messed something up. He said I had changed the numbers without authorization. His voice was loud enough that people at nearby desks could hear him. I stayed calm. I said quietly, I used the numbers you supplied initially, but they didn't match the current client data from 3 days ago. I verified with the client before using the updated numbers. In a team meeting later that day, Victor actually tried to blame me for the very mistake he had almost caused. He said I had altered project specifications without permission. He was doubling down. He was willing to lie in front of leadership. He was willing to risk his credibility. I could feel everyone looking at me. My ears were ringing, but I kept my voice steady. I said, I used the numbers provided to me, but they were outdated compared to what the client gave me directly. I verified with the client before finalizing the presentation. The room went quiet. Kevin, Victor's boss, leaned forward with interest. He asked to see the email chain. Victor froze. I could see the moment he realized he had made a critical error. He had lied in front of his boss, and now he was about to be proven wrong. I pulled up the entire conversation on the conference room screen. Every email was there. The outdated numbers he had given me. The timestamp showing when I received them. The client's updated information from our call. My verification emails. My timestamps showing when I made the changes and why. Everything. The room went completely silent. Kevin looked at Victor with something that looked a lot like disappointment. After the meeting, Victor sent me a meeting invite. The title was Performance Concerns. The time was scheduled for the next morning. The location was his office. I knew what this meant. He was escalating. He was going to try to end this on his own terms before I could do anything about it. He was going to build his case in that meeting and hope that Kevin believed his version of events more than the truth. He underestimated that I tracked everything in writing. He underestimated my patience. He underestimated my documentation folder and the meticulous records I had kept. I spent the night before that meeting organizing everything I had collected. I couldn't sleep anyway, so I might as well use the time productively. I created a presentation. I made timelines. I laid out the truth like a map showing exactly where he failed and exactly where he had lied. There were screenshots. There were emails. There were dates and times and names and context. There was no way to deny any of it. Every lie was documented. Every contradiction was recorded. Every instance of favoritism was catalogued with dates. I printed it all out. I organized it into a binder. I knew what I had to do. I was going to end this. Not out of revenge, but because he had given me no other choice. I pulled every relevant email from my archives. I organized them chronologically so they told a story. I included Slack messages where they existed. I added timestamps to everything. I created a document that was impossible to argue with. It showed the pattern. It showed the lies. It showed the contradictions. It showed the favoritism. It showed the setup. It showed that Victor had a system for destroying people, and I had documented all of it. I wasn't doing this out of anger anymore. I was doing this because truth matters. Because people like Victor shouldn't be allowed to destroy people like me just because they can. Because there might be others who needed to see that documentation itself was a form of power. That truth, when properly organized, was unstoppable. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the completed binder in front of me. That night, a new meeting was added to my calendar. The participants were me, Victor, and Kevin. It was scheduled for the next morning at 9 o'clock. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I had prepared for this moment. I was ready. He planned to humiliate me in front of his boss. He planned to control the narrative. He started strong, telling Kevin that I had been slipping in my work and missing deadlines and not being a team player. He said I was resistant to feedback and difficult to manage. He said I was creating problems where there weren't any. Every word was a lie, but he said them confidently, with the kind of authority that comes from never being questioned before. His voice was calm. His posture was relaxed. He was treating this like a performance, and he was convinced that he was a good actor. I watched him build his narrative, brick by brick, lie by lie. My heartbeat didn't speed up. It actually slowed down. Felt calm. Felt ready. I felt like someone who knew something that nobody else in the room knew yet. I held the truth in my hands. I held months of evidence. I held his own words, preserved in email, ready to speak against him. Kevin turned to me and asked, "Amelia, what's your perspective on this?" That's when I spoke. I kept my voice calm and professional. I said, "I actually have all communication regarding these projects. I'd like to forward them to you so you can review everything." One click. I sent the entire email chain to Kevin's inbox. Organized. Chronological. Undeniable. Color-coded by category. Indexed by date. I had even created a summary document that explained what each section represented. Kevin opened it immediately. I watched his face as he scrolled through months of evidence. The emails where Victor gave me contradictory instructions. The messages I sent asking for clarification that were never answered. The instances where he blamed me for his own mistakes. The times he gave me outdated information on purpose. The emails where he praised Nathan for work I had done. The team emails where he subtly implied I had dropped the ball when I hadn't. The timestamps showed exactly when each of these things happened. Victor visibly paled as he realized what had just happened. He started stammering, trying to explain, trying to create doubt, but Kevin was already several emails deep. Kevin was seeing the pattern. Kevin was understanding exactly what had been happening. Victor said, "Those emails are taken out of context." But Kevin just kept reading. Kevin ended the meeting abruptly. He said, "I need time to review this. We'll reconvene after I've spoken with HR." Victor walked out without saying anything. I walked out behind him, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. It felt like I could breathe. Over the next week, leadership quietly investigated everything. People started whispering. Victor stopped looking anyone in the eye. His golf buddies, including Nathan, stopped sitting with him at lunch. I stayed professional. I stayed silent. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I didn't send emails to people saying, "I told you so." I just kept doing my work. I answered my emails. I met my deadlines. I was the same person I had always been. But now, everyone could see what I had always been. I was the backbone of this department. I was the one who made things happen. I was the one who could be trusted. Victor was removed from all active projects. His office was temporarily reassigned. I heard through the grapevine that HR was conducting a full investigation into his management practices. Apparently, other people had complained too. Apparently, I wasn't his first target. Apparently, there were other documentation folders out there. Other people he had tried to destroy. Other employees he had manipulated and gaslit. I watched as Victor's reputation crumbled not because I destroyed it, but because he had destroyed it himself. I had just stopped protecting him. I had just let the truth exist without my silence covering it up. One day the following week, an email appeared in my inbox from HR. It said Victor had been terminated effective immediately for creating a hostile work environment and engaging in retaliatory management practices. Employees watched as he was escorted out of the building carrying a single cardboard box containing his personal items. His computer equipment was packed up separately by security. No one spoke. No one said goodbye. I felt neither joy nor guilt. Felt gravity. I felt the weight of consequences. He had brought this on himself through months of deliberate choices. I had just been honest. I had just documented what happened. I had just let the truth exist. A few hours later, a meeting invite appeared in my inbox from Kevin and the HR director. They wanted to meet with me. My stomach twisted with a mixture of anxiety and something else. Something that felt like possibility. The subject line said, "Opportunity discussion." I tried not to hope too much. I tried not to imagine what that could mean. They offered me the promotion. I would be the new project manager. I would lead my own team. I would report directly to Kevin. The salary increase was substantial. The position was exactly what I wanted. Not because I had taken Victor down, but because leadership had finally seen who was actually doing the work all along. Kevin said directly, "You've been carrying this department for years. We should have recognized that sooner." The HR director added, "Your documentation was thorough and professional. It showed a level of maturity and clarity that's exactly what we need in management." This promotion was recognition of what I had accomplished over years, not revenge for what I had suffered. I accepted with steady hands. I felt something settle inside me. This felt right. This felt earned. This felt clean. I started the new position 2 weeks later, and for the first time in years, I walked into the office without dread in my stomach. I walked in feeling like I belonged. I walked in knowing that my work would be recognized and valued. I made it a point to ensure that my new team felt supported and heard. I made it a point to give credit where it was due. I made it a point to communicate clearly and keep detailed records, not as a weapon, but as a way to protect my team members. I close this story with one final reflection. Justice isn't loud or vengeful like people think it is in movies. Real justice is patient. Real justice is strategic. Real justice is rooted in truth. Victor destroyed himself through his own lies and manipulation. I didn't destroy him. I simply stopped protecting him. I documented the truth and let it speak for itself. I've rebuilt my confidence over these months. I've rebuilt my career. I've rebuilt my peace of mind. I eventually left that company 6 months later when I found an even better opportunity at a place where my work was valued from day one and my voice was heard and respected. The lesson I learned through all of this was powerful and life-changing. Documentation is power when you're facing someone who operates through lies. Truth is undefeatable when it's properly organized. Silence is complicity, and speaking up is courage. My final thought, the one I leave with you, is this. Never let someone else narrate your failure. Document your story. Own it. Use the truth wisely, and you'll never lose. If you're facing a victor in your own life, remember that patience and evidence are your greatest weapons. Don't react emotionally. Document everything. Keep your receipts. Let the truth do the talking. And one day, maybe not tomorrow, but one day justice will come.